Back again, and welcome back to another video within this building up application series. And in this video, we're going to actually try and do a registration controller in about under 30 minutes. I'm trying to build a shorter video. So we're going to be building our registration controller that's going to go hand in hand with what we've already built so far. So without further ado, we're going to jump straight into it, and I'm going to try and complete this in under 30 minutes. Right, so on my screen, you can see I've got my editor open, and we're just going to go straight into our application directory. We're going to go to our controller. We're going to create our first controller, create our registration controller. Then we're going to go and register that route afterwards. So let's create a new file. So a new PHP file. It's going to be a registration controller. Just like so. Add that. Yeah, so I'm going to copy the content of my home controller because it's small, and I'm going to paste it into my registration controller just to save some time. Like so. I'm going to make some changes. So registration controller, just like so. I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to also get rid of this as well. Just like so. I'm going to go ahead and create the routes.yaml file and pass this route to our registration controller. So it's going to be in config, it's going to be routes, to a new line. Make sure to always get your indent, because indentation is important in these YAML files. So we're going to say register : controller, and we're going to call this controller registration. We have called this controller registration, and the action, the default action is going to be register, just like so. It could be index, it could be whatever you want, but I'm going to call it register. So that's our route created. Let's close that, and let's change this to register action. Action suffix at the end is important. Right, so what is it that we're going to be doing? We're going to be building this route. We're going to be using the same syntax as we've been using in the last couple of videos. So we're going to be importing our new action, single action class, because that's the action that we're going to be using to persist the data to our database. So in our add definition, let's just import that class in. We're going to say new action, and I'm going to say new action : class, and you can see it imported that class for us at the very top. That is located within our core directory based on main actions, new action. Right, so I'm going to come down to my method, say this new action. I'm going to call the execute method. Then I'm going to call the render method. Then I'm going to render with a form. Then I'm going to end, just like so. Now let's just fix this up a bit. In my execute method, we're going to be calling the current object, which is going to be this particular controller. So I'm going to say this, and the second argument that we're going to pass, we are actually going to be using the second argument in this particular method. That's going to be the entity, and because we're using or registration is an extension of our users table, so we're going to be using the user entity within this particular method as a second argument. So I'm going to say user entity, and we already created that file, I think, in some of the first videos that we created within this mini series. So if I look into my entity folder, you can see we've got user entity already created, right? And we've passed that in, and it's imported it for us. Where is that? At the very top right there. So the third argument is going to be the event. So we're going to be creating a new event. So each time we create a new controller, we're most likely going to be creating an event for it as well. So I'm going to say registration action event class. And I've not yet created this file, so let's go ahead and create it now. So it's going to be, let's close that down, going to event, create a new file. It's going to be called registration action event, just like so. And I'm going to copy the content of one and paste it right in and make changes. Copy that. And let's change that to registration action event. So it's registration action event, just like so. Action event. And let's make some changes to the name as well, because it has to be a unique name that identifies this particular event. So it's going to be registration action event. And while we're at it, we're going to also go ahead and register this event within that events.yaml file. Let's just try and fix this particular error. See where this is coming from. Yep, right there. Let's close that. Let's get our event.config file. Let's register it right away so we're not having any issues. Where are you? Your events right here. And let's indent over. And we want to go back this step, and we're going to say registration dot subscriber. And it's also important to know that I've started with registration because that is the name of our controller. That's important, right? So if we're creating another controller, we're going to be having events and actions and all of that. When we're registering it, you must register it as the name, like what I've just done, registration dot subscriber, right? And the class that we're going to be using is something that we've not yet created, but we're going to add it in anyways. So I'm going to say app, we're going to say event subscriber, and we're going to say registration action subscriber, just like so. And I'm going to add the other elements onto it, which is register route feedback, and that's going to be app controller, and it's going to be a registration controller, and it's going to be the register action method, right? That's the method that we're going to be getting feedback on. So be that, and we're going to pass a message that's going to display each time we register successfully. So it's going to be you are now registered, something generic like that. Let's put that right there so it could be identified as an array. Let's just bring that up a bit so that looks in line. Class, yep. So let's close that down. So now that we've registered that subscribe class, let's go ahead and now create it. We won't be doing nothing with that class in this particular video. I just want to make a quick registration video, and then later on we'll sort of like implement some methods that can do stuff each time a user registers onto our system, like send them an email to confirm their registration or whatnot. We can do whatever that we want to do, right? So let's finish add the rest of the arguments to this particular method. And the fourth argument is going to be the schema, but we have not yet sort of like we've got the implementation within the core, but we've not yet touched on to how we go about creating schemas that we can migrate to our database. That's going to be in a future video, but for now I'm going to put null because I've already got a database set up with my users table, right? So I'm going to say null, and the fifth argument is going to be that method, that magic constant, just like so, right? So what I want to do in my form is also we're going to go ahead and build that registration form. We're going to import it and pass it to this form method within this chain. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to forms. We're going to create a new directory called registration within this client directory. So we're going to say registration, and we're going to create a new file, PHP file called register form, just like so. So let me just copy the content of one of our forms that we've already created and make changes to it. Copy to a register form, paste that in. We need to change the namespace because we're no longer in the security directory. So we need to change that to registration because that's a directory that we're now in. So it's app forms client registration. Let's change that as well to register form, just like so. Let's just get rid of this because we're going to be building some new inputs for this particular form. So we're going to be keeping this particular form very slim. So we're going to be having a first name, last name, email, and a password field and a submit button, right? So as I was saying, the structure of our form, when we're building using the form builder component, the structure is going to be the same. So I don't need to make no changes to this particular file. I'm just going to go ahead and start creating all the inputs. So I'm going to say return this form, and the first thing, well, the second method in the chain is going to be the add method. So I'm going to list them out because they're going to be 4 input fields. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, add, and the last method in the chain is going to be that build method. I mentioned 4 input, but there's actually 5 because that submit button is the fifth input on this particular form. So I'm going to add another add method. Then lastly, you're going to be adding that build method. As I'm working, I realize my screen size is still a bit small, so let's up that a bit. Settings 20, just like so. Sorry about that. So we're going to be filling out these add methods with the relevant field that we're trying to display to our screen. So the first one is going to be into this blueprint, and it's going to be a text field, right? And the first argument is going to be the name attribute, and we're going to be calling this first name. We're going to leave it like that for the time being, and because we've got no CSS styling just yet. When we come to implement that, we're going to come back here and make changes as we see fit. Now the second field is going to also be a text field. Say blueprint text field, and that's going to be last name. Let's put a semicolon here to kill that error. The third one is going to be this blueprint. It's going to be email field, so we can take a user's email address because that's one of the unique fields within our users table, because that is how we identify each user. That's how we log in, right? So that has to be a unique field, right? And the first argument is going to be email. And also note that the attribute name is also the same name within our database field. Our database columns is also named the same as our attribute. It makes it easy to sort of like persist information without changing the name of the fields, right? So that's an important point. When you're creating database column, it's good to name it the same as how you name your input fields. It makes persisting data to your database a lot easier. I'm going to actually add a second argument, a class as a second argument to this email. So it's going to be an array to say UK with 1-2 and leave it as that. Yeah. So go to the fourth one to be this blueprint. Actually, let's just get rid of that because we've got no CSS yet. We'll come back and fix that later on. Let's get password, and it's going to be blueprint password, and the password field in my database is called password hash. It's going to be a password hash, just like so. Right, and I believe that this needs some changing because password hash is also going to be the name of the label, but we don't really want the underscore hash, so we can change that to a different label. But I will leave it like that and I will print the form out, then we'll see what we can come and modify or what we want to hide. Right, after that then we need to get our submit button. So it's to be this blueprint, and it's going to be submit, just like so. And we're going to be calling this button, we're going to be calling it register. Let's just call it register for now. And also we need to, so the first argument on this particular submit button is going to be the attribute name that our single action class is submittable method is going to be looking out for. And as I said in the last video, there's a way that I go about doing this, and all it is going to be the name of the method and the controller that that method is in. So the name of the method is going to be register, and the controller is registration, just like so. Spell that properly, registration, just like so. Right, so the second argument in here is going to be the class, which is going to be an array, but as I'm saying, we've got no CSS. I'm going to put an empty array, and the third argument is going to be the name of the button. So I'm going to call register new account, something like so. So the fifth, well, the build method takes in an array as an argument. So I'm going to pass in the first elements that says before, say it will be a div with a class that says UK wrapper, and after is going to be the closing div element. If I can type properly, just like so. Right, so we got 5 elements or 5 inputs within this form: first name, last name, email, password, and our submit button. So I want to go and import this particular form within our registration controller. So I'm going to come into my add definitions, and I'm going to say register form, and I'm going to point to that particular form, register form, like so, and we want the class, and that's imported that for us right at the top right here. So now we're going to simply pass that property to this form method within the chain. So it's called register form, just like so. Right, so now that we've got to that step, what we want to do now is to create that template that's going to be where we're going to go and see that particular form. So if I go to my template directory in my client directory and to create a new folder called registration, so directory registration, because that's the name of the controller, right? And within that I'm going to create a new file, a new HTML file called register, because that is the name of the method. Right, add that. Let's just clear this out. I'm going to extend that base layout. So it's extend layout dot HTML, and we need a content body, which is going to be block content, and we want to end that block. end block, just like so. And within that block, we want to pass the form, just like so. Right? So let's close that down. And let's try and visit that page and see what we're getting back. So if I switch my screen, right here, I'm going to reload. That's what we were doing before. So we got an error right away saying registration action subscriber does not exist. So let's have a look at that and see if we've made any errors anywhere. So switch my screen again. Let's go back to our event subscriber. We got right, so we've not actually put that class in the right direction because I can't find it. Where did I put it? Let's try and figure out where I put that file. Or did I even create it? I don't think I created the file actually. So let's create that file. Just gonna call registration action subscriber. Just like so. Add it. Let's just copy the content of this. Login. Let's just paste that in. Let's change this. Registration. And we want to change the action as well. So it's going to be registration action event. Let's copy that. And we want to paste it right here. Paste. And paste it right here as well. Just like so. And that should be that. So let's switch our screen again. Reload. No, that's fine. So we're going to hit up that register route and see if it's going to print that form that we've just created. It's going to be a register because that's the name that we created for it within that YAML file. Register, and we got another error saying, I can see we got a misspelling right here. So let's go and fix that. Switch my screen. This is what happens when you copy and paste, guys. You make some errors. Let's close this. Registration form. So we got spelling check right there. Registration. And let's see if it needs fixing within our controller. Yep. IS. Right, so let's try that again. Right, so that's printing that form for us. Let's try and increase the size of our screen. Yep. So we've got the first name, last name, email. You see we got that password hash, which we don't want. We got a label for our button as well. So we can go ahead and make some changes to that very quickly. So let me change my screen again. And let me go to the form, and we're going to be getting those third argument within the add method. So let's tackle the button first. Let's just put this on a separate line. Let's make some space in here. So grab that, put that on a new line, to comma, and say null. We can say this blueprint. We get the settings, and then we're going to call false in the first argument. We're going to say null. We're going to say true for the false for the label, right? Because we want to hide that label for the button. So if I switch our screen again, let's reload. You can see that button is gone. That label is gone for our registration button. So let's change the text right there as well. So let's go back to our editor, and in that password hash, let's put this on a new line. Let's null the second argument because we're not using that. And let's get to the third argument by calling this blueprint settings. We're going to say false for the first argument, null. We're going to say true for the label because we want to change, or we want to keep the label, but we're going to change it to password, just like so. Right? So let's switch our screen again. and let's reload, and now it's just saying password, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to test it out and then see if it's going to work for us. But let's quickly check, go back over our controller, make sure it's actually pointing to all the right, or pointing in all the right directions. Just close that. So we got our new action, which is a single action class that we can use in any of our controllers when we're trying to persist information to our database. Now I'm going to do a separate video which is going to explain that new action and explain all the different parts that make up that new action, right? So if I try and test that, let's go to screen. I'm going to use this fake filler Chrome extension to just put some dummy data in, right? Let's click on register. So we get in an error called call to a member function get repo. Now we need to add our model to our controller. So let's go back to our editor. As I was saying, our registration system is directly linked to our user model because it's just an extension of that user's database table. So we have to import that user model within this registration controller. But if I take you back to the last videos that I was doing, I did mention that I was going to be making a user component, taking away all that user's code that we've been writing, and I was going to make a component for it that's going to be part of our core, right? So I've done that over the past couple of days, and I have put that on packages. I've updated this before I came on screen, so I've got the latest version of MagmaCore within this application that we're building, right? I know that we've created our app in our app directory. I know that we've created that user model in the last couple of videos, but we're not going to be using the user model. We're going to be importing from the user model within that component that we've created, right? So I'm going to import that, and what's going to happen once we import that is going to throw some errors here and there. So what we're going to be going through those and try and fix them step by step, because we're now importing from a different component. So there's going to be little errors that we're going to be fixing. So let's just do that first. So let's say use MagmaCore, and it's called user manager, and we want the user model from that component, right? As I'm saying, this has all been updated. So once you update your composer, if you're following along, you would also get access to all of these updated component. So I'm going to say, come down in my add definitions, I'm going to say repository, and I'm going to point to that user model. Now I know that there's some stuff that I need to change, so I'm going to try and do that so we get less errors. And the first one is going to be the app entity, right? Because when we come to doing validation, the validation class is looking out for the app, looking for the user entity, and because we're now using the user manager component, we also must change this to point to the entity class within that particular component. So it's going to be MagmaCore, and it's going to be user manager, user entity, just like so, right? And what else do we need to make changes to? Registration action. Oh yeah, we need to import that class as well. So just say use app. That's part of our app directory. So this event is called registration action event, just like so. So that's nothing to do with the user management component. This is just something that I've not added in because we're using this class right here and I've not imported it, right? So now we've imported that. That's one error we're going to prevent ourselves from getting. So let's try that quickly and see what other errors it's going to throw up. So let's reload this page. Reload. Let's put some dummy data in and say register. Right. So we're getting an error. Just password hash. Right. So I know what this error is because, as I'm saying, I've been working on this component. So I've also made some changes to some of the utility method or utility classes. So I'm going to take you to my GitHub account real quick so I can actually copy and paste some of the settings that I've added and put that into our app.yaml file as well. So I'm going to say GitHub. Let's find our GitHub page. Let's go to Skeleton, which is the framework that I'm building off screen. Now let's go to our config directory, app.yaml, and let's copy and paste this entire security parameter right here. Let's go back to our page. Let's go back to switch my screen again. Let's go to our config. Let's go to our app file, and you can see within security we've only got a few settings. To copy that, I'm going to paste in what we've just copied out, and you can see add in a couple more parameters for security wise, like we've got different password algorithm that we can use. We got the cost factor for our password hashing, and we've got login attempts set at 3, and we've got a timeout set at 30. So we got additional stuff that we've also added for use with our user manager component, right? So let's actually save that, close it. Let's try that again. Let's switch my screen again. Let's reload, and let's do that again. Register, right? So you can see that something's happened. We've redirected back with that message that we've put. So you are now registered is a message that we wrote in that events.yaml file. So I'm gonna take my screen again. Switch my screen again, and let's bring up that YAML file. Events.yaml is what we wrote right there. So we know that our registration submitted, but we don't know if it actually works. So I'm going to take it to my database. Let's just switch my screen again. Let's just go to my users table. Let's just increase that a bit. Let's go to my users table. You can see we got 3 records in there at the moment, but we don't know whether that actually worked or not. So let's actually go back to the registration form and let's try and submit a new user. So if I reload, you can see we've got 3 items within that users table. Let's just go back to our own page. Let's go to the registration route, register, and let's do dummy data, and let's say register, right? So let's go back to our database, reload. You can see that did actually work because now we've got a 4th item within our database table, right? So that works. We know that works, but there's bits that you've not seen which is going on in the background, which I'm going to be making a separate video on that you could click down in the description because it's going to be available to watch, and that's going to put a little bit of context on stuff like the new action event class or the new action single action class, because that is where all the magic is happening. That's where we're sort of like firing up our validation and persisting data to our database. So for a bit more context on how that works, just click the link down in the description below and check that video out, because it will put a bit of light on what we've just done right here. And you might have noticed that you also see that once we register, it actually redirects us back to the home page. So it goes to show that the redirection works right away as well, and that is to do with the fact that we've set up a base event and a base subscriber class. So if I take it back to that as well, quickly go through that again. So you can see that if I go to app, go to our event subscriber directory, registration, you can see that we're using that flash login event, but we're going to change this because this is not a login. So we could say flash register event, right? Just to make it that we know that this is the registration part of our event dispatching. So let's paste that right there. And this is basic. We're going to have this particular method in pretty much in all of our subscriber classes, because remember what I'm saying, we're using events to do a lot of like redirecting and flashing. So you will find this particular method in all of our event subscriber class, and this pretty much is redirecting us back where we're coming from, which is the home page, right? So event and redirecting work it works straight out of the box once we register. So we can quickly register a new user again and just see that in action again. So scene, let's go to register, let's do a dummy data, register new account. Again, it redirects us right away. You are now registered. Take it back to the database, reload. You can see we've got a 5th item in that database of that user that we've just registered, right? So that is where perfectly fine. And yeah, so that's it for this little video. It's a very simple registration script that's going to go as part of our application. We're going to be coming back to it later on to sort of like dress it up a little bit, refactoring as we go along, but we're going to be motoring through it. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe to the videos and channel, and stay tuned for the next video coming up.